So thank you so much, Maharaj, for coming, and I hope this is not going to be one of those rare appearances. We come more often to Chicago. And I'll let Maharaj speak now. Thank you so much.
Swami Srimad Vangris. Esi Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shila Prabhupada ki. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Bharavajaka Stara Sadashi Srimad Vangris Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki. Anantakota Vaishnavrinda ki. ISKCON founder Acharya Vangris Shila Prabhupada ki. Namacharya Shila Haridas Thakur ki. Famous Goho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki. Navadip Mayapur Dham ki. Ganga Mayi ki. Muna Mayi ki. Tulsi Devi ki. Bhakti Devi ki. Sankirtan Yagya ki. Harinam Sankirtan ki. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki. Gopni Mananda. All glory is to the assembled devotees. Glory is to the assembled devotees. Glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Shri Guru. Nam Vishnu Gadaya Krishna Kristaya. Stay Saraswati Devi Gaura. Somebody. Maybe I could have a Bhagavad Gita? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Thank you for all coming here this evening and giving me this opportunity to be in your association. I didn't expect such a detailed introduction. Practically speaking, all the details were pretty accurate. I guess they must have been somewhere on the internet. But as you said that you included it because you thought it may be relevant for the purpose of our gathering this evening, being it Gita Jayanti. And certainly there is some connection with some of those details by the mere fact that it was Bhagavad Gita, that, as it is, obviously, that had such a deep impact on my life. In fact, as you described many times, people ask me, when did I first meet Srila Prabhupada? And I always tell them in 1972. And they ask me, where did I meet him? And I said, in a bookstore. And then and naturally they ask, what was Prabhupada doing in a bookstore? And I said, I usually say he was sitting on a shelf. And it was my first meeting in Bhagavad Gita, as it is. And oftentimes, when I'm asked to speak about Prabhupada, although I did see Prabhupada first, as you said correctly, first time I saw him was in 1975 in New York, and I was already first and second initiated by him. And I saw him in Philadelphia, I saw him in Mayapur, saw him in New York a couple of times, in Mayapur. Vrindavan, I had the good fortune of being able to prepare his rooms for him when he was coming to Vrindavan, cleaning the rooms, and although I had to be out before Prabhupada got there. But nonetheless, I did have occasion to see him and to hear him. I always feel that more important to describe some of these events, although they certainly they're deeply embedded in my heart, those exchanges although not verbal, even his glance was significant enough to really, in 1975, was to impact my heart. But what really impacted was Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. And I feel that it's important to emphasize that when I talk about my meetings with Prabhupada, because if anybody can understand how I was brought into Krishna consciousness, and it could happen to anybody, not only in 1972, but in 2018. Prabhupada's just as accessible today as he was then, and he makes it clear that his accessibility is there and within his books. And as you mentioned also, that in my early formative years in Krishna consciousness, when I was first, although I did some carpentry work in the temple, when I first came to the temple, then shortly thereafter I was out on book distribution, and I did struggle with it. I struggled with it for a couple of years, and going back and forth from the temple to back out on books distribution. But I always found that in the midst of those struggles, that when I opened up the pages to Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada always somehow was right there to speak to me, and quite frequently, whatever I opened up to was exactly what I needed to hear. And devotees tell me they have similar experiences even now. So, certainly, Prabhupada making Bhagavad Gita accessible in his books, making himself accessible within his books, is certainly as relevant today as it was 46 years ago. And there are many things I could say in that connection, but I thought I would take the opportunity to read a verse from the Bhagavad Gita and speak a little bit about it, because Prabhupada says something quite significant in this verse. He says this verse is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. So it's chapter 11, text 55. It's a long purport. I don't know if I'll have time to read it all, but we'll start. Mat karma krin mat paramo, mad bhakta sangavarjita, nirvaira savabhuteshu yas samam eti pandava. My dear Arjuna, he who engages in my pure devotional service, free from the contaminations of fruitive activities and mental speculation, he who works for me, who makes me the supreme goal of his life, and who is friendly to every living being, he certainly comes to me. Purport. Anyone who wants to approach the supreme of all the personalities of Godhead on the Krishna Loka planet in the spiritual sky, and be intimately connected with the Supreme Personality, Krishna, must take this formula as stated by the Supreme Himself. Therefore, this verse is considered to be the essence of Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is a book directed to the conditioned souls who are engaged in the material world with the purpose of lording it over nature, and who do not know of real spiritual life. The Bhagavad Gita is meant to show how one can understand his spiritual existence and his eternal relationship with the Supreme Spiritual Personality, and to teach one how to go back home, back to Godhead. Now here is the verse which clearly explains the process by which one can attain success in his spiritual activity, devotional service. I'll stop there for now. We'll speak a little bit, and if there's time, I'll read a little bit more. Om Jnana Timirandasya Garanjana Salakaya Chaksha Onminitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Nangayate Yarim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shigunundinataranam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sanyavari Pastachade Satanane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. My dear Arjuna, he who engages in my pure devotional service, free from the contamination of fruitive activities and mental speculation, he who works for me, who makes me the supreme goal of his life, and who is friendly to every living being, he certainly comes to me. Sometimes, I think this way also. In many places in Srila Prabhupada's books, in fact, everywhere in Srila Prabhupada's books, Srila Prabhupada always emphasizes pure devotional service. Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Chaitanya told Devananda Pandit that every page of Srimad Bhagavatam from the beginning to the end, beginning, middle, and end, glorifies pure devotional service. It's the spotless Purana. Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada, of course, in his commentaries, he usually uses this adjective, pure devotional service, quite frequently. And as I said, sometimes when we hear that, and confessing myself also, we begin to question, a pure devotional service is such an elevated state of consciousness, and if pure devotional service is the requirement for going back home, back to Godhead, then what chances do I have for actually getting this destination that's described in this verse? Krishna says, if you're engaged in my pure devotional service, if you're free from the contamination of fruitive activities and mental speculation, working only for me, making me the supreme goal of life, friendly to every living entity, then you come to me. There is a verse I often quote from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 11th canto, which addresses a couple of these points. It is spoken by Narada Muni to Vasudeva, and Vasudeva had inquired from Narada Muni to please explain to him about pure devotional service. And he was specifically inquiring, how is it that pure devotional service can eliminate fear? And previous to that, he was speaking about how the demigods and the different heavenly planets, they're competing, they're not so pure. Some of them are not so pure, some of them are attached to their positions, some of them are attached to their opulence. And we hear many different examples in the Bhagavatam that we know that not all the demigods are completely pure, although they're devotees of the Lord. So in this one verse from the 11th canto, Narada Muni says that pure devotional service is so transcendently potent that simply by hearing about it, simply by glorifying it in response, simply by meditating on it, simply by faithfully and respectfully accepting that it exists, simply by praising the service of others, that even one who hates all the demigods and who is envious of all living entities can immediately become purified. And it's a very powerful verse, because if any of you, but like myself, think, well, what qualification do I have to speak about pure devotional service? What qualification do I have to practice pure devotional service? What qualifications do I have in any way to achieve the perfection of pure devotional service? Then this verse really illustrates that actually the best qualification for achieving pure devotional service to become non-envious of all living entities, because as Krishna says here, who is friendly to every living entity, every living being, is to hear the glories of pure devotional service. And when one hears it, then if one simply repeats it, although when Prabhupada emphasized in many places, a lot of times, he emphasized the necessity to repeat what one's heard. Of course, the more we hear, the more we repeat, and the more we become purified. But not only that, by meditating on pure devotional service is something that I would like to achieve. And even those who are very elevated devotees of the Lord, they teach by their own example that pure devotees don't even think they have pure devotional service. Brihad Bhagavatamrita, when Narada Muni was visiting all of these exalted devotees, one after the other, each devotee, he illustrated his purity by the mere fact that when Narada Muni said, "I heard that you were the greatest recipient of Krishna's mercy," each devotee declared, "How could you make such a statement about me? I don't have Krishna's mercy. I'm not worthy of Krishna's mercy because I don't love Krishna and I don't do enough service for Krishna." And each devotee who was approached and immediately pointed to the next devotee, because they're not envious, that's the symptom of a devotee, he's not envious. He always sees that there's a devotee greater than I am, and he's much more advanced than I am. And he's got Krishna's mercy. So the devotee never thinks he's an advanced devotee. In fact, one time, one devotee wrote a poem to Srila Prabhupada, and in his poem he was actually made the mistake of speaking of himself as a devotee. And Prabhupada corrected him, said, "Oh, no, this is not correct. A devotee never thinks he's a devotee. He's an aspiring devotee, but he never thinks he's a devotee. We don't think we're devotees. We always think, I have something to aspire for." When we look at other devotees, we think, oh, just look at their qualities, look at their good qualities. I see so many good qualities in them. I have something to aspire for. How can I become a better devotee? By serving them. And as this verse we just quoted said, not only by serving them, but by glorifying them, by praising them. One who praises the service of others, he can become non-envious. He becomes an advanced devotee. In fact, sometimes when I speak of this, I always tell a little story. It's a nice story. And although I want to get back to the verse, but it illustrates this point. I remember I have a very dear godbrother of mine, Sridhar Maharaj. And I was with Sridhar Maharaj before he departed. We had friendly relationships with him. And Sridhar Maharaj had, as many of you may know, he had liver cancer. He was diagnosed with cancer that was untreatable, and he wanted to go to Mayapur to prepare himself to leave this world. He wanted to be in the association of his godbrothers. He wanted to be in the association of his godbrothers. He wanted to be there for the installation of Panchatattva. It was in 2004 when they were installed. And he wanted devotees to come in his room and have kirtan with him. Took shelter of the holy name of the Lord. And because I had a relationship with the nature of our relationship, he liked my kirtans. And oftentimes, different places, he would invite me to come and lead kirtan with him, even though it's just him and I once in Mumbai. He called me, he was in his room near the hospital, and he said, Maharaj, and I was in the hospital at the time getting treatment, would you come and have kirtan with me? So I said, sure. So I went, and it was just Maharaj, there was a harmonium there, and said, can you please lead kirtan? So he was attracted to chanting. So he wanted to do that in Mayapur. So when the time came when Sridhar Maharaj came to Mayapur to prepare to depart, when I received Maharaj, he had invited me another time and I wasn't able to go to have kirtan. So I told Maharaj, this time Maharaj, anytime you want me, 24/7, I'll be there and I'll have kirtan. So I used to go to his room in the evening after the GBC meetings, and many devotees would assemble at that time. Maharaj was bedridden. Oftentimes he couldn't even get up. He would lie in bed and he would dance with his arms. And the devotees would have kirtan that way. And I would go oftentimes in the evening. And sometimes I would lead, sometimes other devotees would lead. And one evening after the GBC meeting, I had a very bad headache. And I was thinking, I don't know if I can make it. So I wrote a note and I sent it up to his secretary, Mayapur Das. And I said, on the note I said, Maharaj, please forgive me, I have a very bad headache tonight, and I don't think I'll be able to come for kirtan. And then I started to walk back to the room where I was staying, and while I was walking back to the room, I began to think, here, Sridhar Maharaj is lying in bed, he's taking shelter of the holy name, and he's very sick, he has liver cancer, and he's chanting every night. What's my headache? I started to think, in comparison. And then I was thinking, I got strength. I got strength from thinking about him, and then I decided, I'm going to go back. So I didn't go to my room, and I went to Maharaj's room instead, and when I opened up the door, I looked inside, and Maharaj was lying on the bed. The devotees were having kirtan. And Maharaj looked up to me and he said, oh, Niranjana Swami. And he got up from bed and he put his hand down on the cushion and said, come here. And I said, Maharaj, the room was full of devotees, I don't want to disturb anything. So Maharaj told the devotees, make room for Niranjana Swami. And I went and sat down on his bed, and then I was obviously wondering what, I thought maybe Maharaj wants to give me a talk, wants me to give a talk. I didn't know what he wanted me to do. And so he sat up and he said to Mayapur, give me the tiger balm. And he took the tiger balm, if you know what tiger balm is, right? And he sat there and he started massaging my forehead. And I had to sit there, and I said, Maharaj, and he was really like, and I was like overwhelmed, like here's Vaishnava. This is a Vaishnava. I mean, here he is lying on his bed, who doesn't know when he's going to depart, and devotees, he's trying to take shelter of the holy name, and he was from very different, and he's thinking of my headache. Vaishnava. It's Vaishnava. I'd like to tell this story. We can think of so many other stories, but we praise. If we praise the other devotees and praise their service, we become purified. Just like, I'll give you another example, my own experience. A few weeks ago, I was in Kiev, and this is somewhat related to what you live in Ukraine? You used to live in Ukraine? Я живу в Киеве. I live in Kiev most of the time. Well, I'm there a lot. Anyways, I was in Kiev, and we were also just getting ready for the devotees were going to go out on the marathon, and they have a tradition there that just before the marathon they try to encourage the congregation and the devotees to purchase books to give as gifts. So I decided I would give a talk, and I spoke from Vaisheshika Prabhu. He has on PrabhupadaMarathon.com, he has a video that's called Be a Giver. And the essence of his presentation, it was actually a rap. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but we showed it to the devotees, and we translated it. And the essence of his presentation is that the more you give, the more you grow. So I took his theme, and I presented his theme to the devotees, how to give and how to grow, and the emphasis was on Prabhupada's books, and especially Bhagavad Gita. And I also spoke about Srimad Bhagavatam, the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam, and told some stories about Prabhupada and how he distributed Srimad Bhagavatam in the early days. But I give all credit to Vaisheshika Prabhu, because he was definitely, he's a powerhouse, he's such an inspiration. In fact, it was here in Chicago that I went out. Vaisheshika? Was it 1975 he was here? No, he was in New York. I was distributing books with him in New York in Penn Station. But anyways, and he was only like 17, 18 years old back then. And anyways, so I told the devotees about Vaisheshika Prabhu, and I showed the video, and he spoke on the video, and I spoke a little bit afterwards. And then after the talk, we encouraged everybody to purchase books. And we had stacks of books in the back of the room. And after 1 hour, within 1 hour after the talk and the videos and everything else, everybody at the Sunday program purchased 7,800 books. In 1 hour. and a lot of them were Bhagavad Gitas. And mostly, I think it's 2,600 of them were either Maha big books or big books. And others were smaller books, like Ishopanishad and everything like that. But we should think about what others are doing and how we can actually serve them, assist them. And I told all the devotees, go on to PrabhupadaMarathon.com and sign up and become a giver. And assist Vaisheshika Prabhu in his efforts to spread Krishna consciousness, distribute books all over the world. He's such a powerhouse, that really inspiring this book distribution. So we can see that there's so many devotees who are doing so much wonderful service. When we praise the service of other devotees, we become purified. And that's what Narada Muni states. Pure devotional service is so transcendently potent that simply by hearing about it, by glorifying it in response, by meditating on it, and by faithfully and respectfully accepting that it exists. Okay, maybe I don't have it, but it exists. It does exist. We hear about it on the pages of Bhagavad Gita constantly. We hear about instructions that Krishna is giving to Arjuna. We hear about it in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, how Krishna reciprocates with his pure devotees, and how those devotees become purified by coming in contact with Krishna, and how Krishna purifies from within the heart even those akama sava kamava moksha kama udara diti vena bhakti yogina yajita purusha param, whether one is filled with material desires, whether one has no material desires, whether one is desiring liberation, a person who has broader intelligence, by all means he will worship Krishna, because Krishna will purify. Krishna will purify. So when we hear about Krishna, and we hear about pure devotional service to Krishna, what happens is that even one who hates all the demigods and is envious of all living entities, they become purified. There's that verse, Prahlad Maharaj, I think it is in the 5th canto, Svastyastu Vishvasa Kala Prasidatam. He speaks about, let there be good fortune throughout the whole universe. May all envious persons become pacified. May all living entities become calm. And he says, may all living entities become calm by engaging in bhakti yoga, for by accepting devotional service, one will think of each other's well-being. Prahlad Maharaj says that he says, therefore, let us engage in devotional service to the Lord, and let us always be fixed in remembrance of Him. What happens when one becomes fixed in remembrance of the Lord? He could think of the welfare of others. And Prabhupada says, only a non-envious person can think of the welfare of others. He says, plays in the purport. And that's what Prahlad Maharaj is saying. If we become non-envious, then we can think of each other's welfare. But if we're not freed from that envy, then it's very difficult, because then we begin to think, what's in it for me? The best way to become non-envious is to meditate, as Prahlad Maharaj says, to engage in devotional service to Krishna and to fix our minds on Krishna. And in this way, we'll be able to think of others' benefit. And interesting point, Prabhupada, when I quote this verse from the 5th canto, Svastyastu Vishvasa Kala Prasida. Kala means envious person. And in the word-for-word translation, Prabhupada translates the word Kala as envious. And Prabhupada puts in parenthesis, almost everyone. Look it up, it's 5th canto. 5th canto, I think it's 12th chapter. 18th chapter, the residents of Jambudweep offer prayers. 9th verse, I think. Yeah. Kala Prabhupada says, means almost everybody. Of course, when we hear that, we think, well, I'm not envious. How could Prabhupada say almost everyone? Well, yes, maybe almost everyone, but not me. Prabhupada says almost everyone in this world. But as we know and Prabhupada says that in the commentary, he says a non-envious person, he's liberal in his social dealings with others. He's liberal with others, but he's strict with himself. That's a symptom of a non-envious person. Whereas the tendency is sometimes we think that, when I see others are doing something, let me find what they're doing wrong and correct them. And that's devotional service. It's called preaching. That's how I preach. I look for others, they look for their defects, and I correct them. And I'm engaged in devotional service because it's preaching. But actually, Prabhupada says a non-envious person, he's liberal in his dealings. He's liberal with others, but he's strict with himself. It means he teaches by his own example. Prabhupada even said in many places, example is more important than precept. He teaches by his own example. He teaches that, yes, I can be liberal with others, because if I can somehow just strictly follow and try to remember Krishna, to think about my service to Krishna, and to think about how I have received this service to Krishna, and how my service is relevant because it's been blessed by the superior Vaishnavas who've engaged me in this service. And if there's any success in my service, then it's because of their desire. It's not because of me. It's because of their desire. Prabhupada says in the 3rd canto of the Bhagavatam, in Lord Brahma's prayers for creative potency, he says, fortunate is that person who's been entrusted with devotional service. And if he's always conscious that he's subordinate to the Supreme Lord, that whatever result comes from his efforts will manifest nicely. So, but if he forgets, if he's bewildered by the modes of material nature, he thinks himself to be the doer of activities. If he forgets then even though the result may look very nice, Prabhupada says it's not so nice. It's an external result. What's nice is that we're conscious of our subordinate position to the Lord. And Prabhupada says, fortunate is that person who's been entrusted with responsible service. And if he's conscious of his subordinate position, Krishna says in 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, "In all activities depend upon me. Work always under my protection. In such devotional service, you should be fully conscious of me. If you're conscious of me, you'll cross over all the obstacles of conditional life by my grace. And if you do not work in such consciousness and act through false ego, not hearing me, you'll be lost." So, Krishna says, if you're conscious of me, you'll be successful. If you forget and act through false ego, not hearing my instructions, Bhagavad Gita, the essence of Bhagavad Gita. What is the essence of Bhagavad Gita? Manmana bhava mad bhakta madhyaji man namaskuru. This is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says to always think of me, worship me, offer your homage unto me, surely you will come to me. And what is the next verse? Savardama purichaja mamekam sharana. Sometimes people think that's the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Actually, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains, when Krishna is saying, abandon all dharmas and surrender unto me, he's saying that all the components of that surrender are in the previous verse. That's what he means. All the components of surrender are manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskar. This is surrender. To think of Krishna, to worship Krishna, offer homage unto him. This is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna says that if you think of me and you're conscious of me, then I'll protect you. But if you act through false ego, not hearing me, you'll be lost. It's not so easy. It's not so easy. But this is what Prabhupada's explaining here. This is the essence of this verse of Bhagavad Gita. And therefore, we should, going back to our original point that we were making, I won't speak too long, I think I was supposed to end at 8 o'clock.
We started late, sir.
Huh?
We started late, so we can go home.
Okay. I should leave time for questions too. And what was I saying? Matak smriti jnanam apohanam cha. Krishna says, from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Vedaishcha saivaraham eva veda vedanta kudveda vedeva chaham. Oh, yes. If you remember me, I'm going back to the original verse where Krishna was saying pure devotional services, Narada Muni was saying pure devotional service is so transcendently potent that if we simply speak about it, we should try to speak about it. We should not think, I have it. But if we hear something and it sounds like it's Krishna's words, and it sounds like there's some element of pure devotional service there. That means sometimes I even quote a verse when I speak about pure devotion. There's one verse that was spoken in the first canto of the Bhagavatam. It's about Maharaj Parikshit, who's a pure devotee of the Lord. Tiraskrita vipalabda kshaptakshita hatahapi nasyatat patikurvanti tad bhakta kavayopihi. This verse states that devotees of the Lord are so forbearing that even if they're cheated, even if they're cursed, neglected, disturbed, insulted, or even killed, they're never inclined to avenge themselves. This is devotee. This is the characteristic. We get insulted, immediately we think, cheated? My God. Neglected? Disturbed? How many times do we encounter these types of experiences in our life, and immediately our tendency is, to immediately look for a way to blame somebody else for it. Like the example is given there, that was about Maharaj Parikshit, but the example in the first canto of the Bhagavatam is like Dharma the bull. When Dharma was beaten by the personality of Kali, and Parikshit Maharaj came before Dharma, and 3 of his legs were broken, and said, "Who did this to you?" And Dharma said, "If I point out the perpetrator of my suffering, I'll be just as guilty as the person who did it. Because nothing happens without Krishna's will." And then Parikshit Maharaj immediately understand, you must be religiosity personified. And he immediately, and my duty is to protect religious principles. So Parikshit Maharaj, who was the protector of religious principles, he sought after Kali and was prepared to chastise him. But nonetheless, we see Srimad Bhagavatam glorifies pure devotional service, beginning, middle, and end. Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada glorifies pure devotional service. We should at least develop an inspiration, an inclination to utilize our time wisely to hear and chant the glories of pure devotional service. Because if we do that, the heart becomes clean. Cheto darpana majana bhava mahardevagni arapana. The heart becomes clean. We become purified by hearing and chanting the glories of pure devotional service. And Prabhupada explains here, right in the very beginning of the purport, that this verse is the essence of Bhagavad Gita because it's pointing the direction, going back home, back to Godhead. What is it? What does he say? He said that the Bhagavad Gita is meant to show how one can understand his spiritual existence and his eternal relationship with the Supreme Spiritual Personality, and to teach one how to go back home, back to Godhead. Now here is the verse which clearly explains the process by which one can attain success in his spiritual activity, devotional service. This is the goal, to go back to Godhead. Sometimes we always look. I was just reading something today. I think it was on the internet. It was a talk that Giriraj Maharaj was giving. He was talking about the half-hen philosophy. And he was saying that sometimes people have the half-hen philosophy. They read a verse in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says that you should perform your duties. And by performing your duties, you should the purpose of your life is to perform your duty and to get the result of something to that effect. I can't remember exactly how he described it. And he says many people become very attached to these verses which emphasize the importance of doing duties. Of course, Krishna says you have a right to perform your prescribed duty and you're not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities and never be attached to not doing your duty. So Krishna definitely gives emphasis on the importance of performing one's duty, and the whole teachings of Bhagavad Gita, of course, was to bring Arjuna to the point of accepting what his duty was, which is ultimately Manmana Bhava Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskara. Anyways, Giriraj Maharaj was explaining that sometimes people place the emphasis on the duty and the results of the duties, getting the results of the duties, and they neglect the verse Savadhamam Purichajamam Kamsana Praja, where Krishna says, abandon all your duties and surrender to me. And he says it's like the half-hen philosophy, like they take one part of the Bhagavad Gita, but they neglect the other part, which is the essence. So we should try to understand what is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. And in this way, yes, perform our prescribed duties, but understand what is the goal. The goal is to please Krishna. The goal is to please Krishna, and if Krishna is pleased, bhajaniya paramasuka matra susukatvam, to the degree that Krishna is pleased by our service, then we can actually experience internal satisfaction and happiness and peace. Savai pungsam parodamo yato bhaktirad hoksajaya haitika patiyata yayatma supati sidati. That the supreme occupation for all mankind is that by which men can achieve loving devotional service to the Transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted in order to satisfy the self. This is Prabhupada, what he's given us in Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada didn't hold any punches. He gave us everything. Every page you open it up, it's pure devotional service. Sometimes even people say, well, actually Swamiji he's put something there that's not there. Sometimes Sometimes people even say that about some of his commentaries, but Prabhupada didn't. He gave us pure devotional service. And if we give the opportunity to hear from him and to serve him, what is that verse in the first canto of the Bhagavatam? Shushusho Shanadanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syanmahat Sevaya Viprapunya Tirtana Shevana. By serving devotees who are freed from vice, great service is done. And by that service, one develops an affinity for hearing the messages and chanting the messages of Vasudeva. We get a chance to serve Srila Prabhupada by hearing his purports, by telling others about what his instructions are, and if we can't do that, then by giving others the opportunity to come in contact with Srila Prabhupada by distributing his Bhagavad Gitas and giving it to others, which is something which is very important. And I can say from my own personal testimony that my first contact with Prabhupada was Bhagavad Gita as it is, and from there on, Prabhupada took over. Took over. And Prabhupada would always say that if we've become fortunate, then best thing we can do is make others fortunate. Yaidam paramam guyam madbhiktai shobhajasati. Nachatasman manusheshu kashtan priyakritama. Says, for one who explains the secret to others, and for him, devotional service is guaranteed. The end, he comes back to me. There's no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. So, a little bit about Bhagavad Gita. Any questions or comments?
Actually, I have two questions, but I can just ask one if we don't have that much time.
I have a meeting after this too, so I don't have much time.
So this verse, Krishna saying to practice pure devotional service, and also he's saying to be friendly to everyone. So could you expand a little bit more on what he means by that friendliness? Because it could just be taken as literally being kind to people, or it could be...
Yes, very good point. Very good point. In fact, I could give a whole lecture. I'll try to encapsulate it as certainly we should not imitate a Mahabhagavata who's friendly towards everyone. That's his position. He sees all living entities, because pure devotees are on that platform, he sees all living entities as servants of Krishna. And he's friendly to everyone. Whereas the Majjhima Bhakta, he makes distinctions. The Majjhima Bhakta, he worships the Supreme Lord. He makes friends with devotees. He preaches to the innocent who are misled. And he neglects, the word that's used is upeksha, neglects those who are envious. So certainly we should be careful, and that's on the Majjhima platform. We should be careful, we still make distinctions. And of course the Majjhima means he's a preacher. He sees Krishna in the heart of all living entities, and by his efforts, because he sees Krishna in the heart, he preaches to them in such a way that he tries to inspire them to follow Krishna's directions within the heart, to turn to Krishna and to serve him. And that's how a Majjhima Adhikari, he preaches and sees Krishna in the hearts of others, and he tries to encourage them to turn to Krishna. Those who are innocent, who are misled. So his friendly towards them means he tries to give them Krishna. And Prabhupada makes that point. His friendliness towards the devotees is that he has to learn. Rupa Goswami says friendliness towards the dati patigunati guyamakyati prichtati bhunte bojayitasas sadvidam piti lakshanam. That he says that friendly relationships between devotees is a devotee gives gifts, accepts gifts, he reveals his mind in confidence, inquires confidentially, gives prasadam and accepts prasadam. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the Sri Bhakti Loka, he brings out a very important point. And he speaks about what is association and what is not association. And he says the limits of association with others is found in this verse from Upadeshamrita, Dati Pratagrinati. He says, when there is priti, when there is affection, there is association. So he says between devotees, there should be priti, there should be affection, friendly relationships. What is friendly relationship? Out of love. What's the criteria of love? Anyubalashita shunyaganakamanyanavitam. We know that love means I give, but I don't expect anything in return. That's a loving exchange. Sometimes we think a loving exchange is I give and he gives to me. But actually a loving exchange means I give because this person is a devotee. He's serving Krishna. I give because I want to help this person in his service to Krishna. And I don't expect anything because by serving him, I'm serving Krishna. In fact, there's the whole story in the Chaitanya Charitamrita of the two Brahmins who went to the story of Sakshi Gopal. The younger Brahmin was serving the senior Brahmin. He was thinking, I serve you because by serving you, I'm serving Krishna. He was thinking that way. So a devotee thinks that way also. He gives. And and when a person accepts because it's offered with love, that is a loving exchange. Giving and accepting. He accepts it because this has been offered with love, even though I don't need it. I don't need it. But I'll accept it because it's been offered with love. And then because it's offered, but Krishna does the same thing. Krishna says, if you offer me a leaf, flower, fruit, and water with love, I'll take it. But it's not the leaf, the flower, the fruit, or the water that he's interested. What's interested does Krishna have in a leaf? They're all his leaves anyways, flowers. But if it's offered with love, he's interested. So he accepts. So Krishna sets the example. When something's offered with love, he accepts. Devotee simply, when another devotee offers out of love, he accepts. And this is friendly relationships, devotees. He reveals his mind in confidence. These days, to reveal a mind in confidence is not a very easy thing to do, because sometimes you reveal your mind in confidence and the next day it's on Facebook. Nobody wants to reveal their mind in confidence because people don't know how to control the urge to speak. And that's a big problem also. There's a certain culture of revealing one's mind in confidence. When there's love, there's confidence. Krishna reveals himself when there's love, his confidence. His confidence. He speaks the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, he gets into more confidential and most confidential. And most confidential is those who have love. So in the same way, with devotees, they have loving exchanges, friendly exchanges. Prabhupada also speaks in the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam. He says that friendly exchanges between devotees means that when the devotees discuss with one another, he does not become envious of the other devotee. He doesn't become proud of his own achievements. That's what Prabhupada says. He's not proud of his own achievements amongst friends. He's thinking of others. So this is how to become friendly, have friendly relationships with devotees. And then for those who are envious, he's compassionate to them. Not he's friendly towards them, he's compassionate to them by his neglect. Because by neglecting them, at least he won't preach to them, because if he preaches to them, he knows they'll blaspheme Krishna, they'll become even more degraded. So he actually thinks of their welfare by neglecting them, but if within his heart he still prays to Krishna, please be merciful. So this is how at least a Majjhima devotee thinks. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that the difference between loving exchanges between devotees and being with non-devotees, he says, in the association of non-devotees, we may give food in charity. We may accept some donation. We may do these same activities, but in the association of non-devotees, there's no priti. Priti is reserved for devotees, affection. He does it out of duty. He does it out of duty. And this is there's a very elaborate detail I'm trying to just summarize of proper way of dealings. But he's dutiful in his dealings with the non-devotees by, he gives them food. He gives them, or he may, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, he may accept donations. He may speak to somebody, but he never speaks confidentially. He doesn't reveal his heart. Because what's this person going to do with what he's revealing from his heart? How's he going to deal with it? He's not a devotee. So he does out of duty, and he reserves his love, priti, for the devotees. And that's how to have friendly relationships with devotees. Upadeshamrita Rupa Goswami also explains that we should always respect everyone. For those who are chanting the holy name of the Lord, we offer a respect to them from a distance, even though they may not be perfect in character. For those who are more fully engaged and taking Vaishnava initiation, we offer our obeisances to them. And for those persons who are completely freed from the propensity of criticizing others, who are free from envy and free from the propensity of criticizing others, we serve them and hear from them. So we have to understand what are the proper relationships that they are. We're not imitating Mahabhagavatas and just being friendly towards everyone. Prabhupada even one time in one lecture, he says, he even uses this example. Only a foolish person will think, oh, here is a tiger, let me embrace him. Said, no, try we not imitate the Mahabhagavatas and think, oh, here is a tiger, let me embrace. So, in the same way, we should be very careful of how we deal with other living entities, and proper discrimination has to be there. That's a little bit. I mean, that was probably too much detail. But I think I should probably end. Huh? Yes? Huh?
It's like a question and comment. I think you touched very sensitive topic, important topic. And devotees are supposed to have all these qualities, to take shortcut, keep them silent, merciful. But at the same time, like when we becoming devotees, like it's a long way till we have these qualities. And sometimes devotees read that they have to open the heart to devotees, and then they get hurt.
And then they get what?
Hurt by the devotees.
Hurt?
Yeah, emotionally by the devotees. So like, how to, like, I think you kind of answered that we should not open ourselves to the tiger. We have to, even among devotees, we have to see whom to open up.
Yes, there has to be trust. There has to be trust.
And being careful, even among devotees, or like...
Even among devotees.
Yeah, thank you.
We have to discriminate. Even among devotees. We have to learn to discriminate and not reveal our minds to somebody that we can't completely trust. But we should understand they do exist. There are devotees whom we can trust. We have to look for them. And if we don't find them, we should be very careful to not be like Duryodhana, who was sent throughout the kingdom to look for somebody who was more advanced than him. And Duryodhana came back and said, I can't find anybody who's more advanced than me. And Yudhishthira Maharaj was sent throughout the kingdom, who was looking for somebody more fallen than him. And he said, I can't find anybody who is more fallen than me. So we have to be very careful to not think that there's nobody more advanced than me. If we look and we have the proper criteria, we'll see that there are devotees who are more advanced. And if they're more advanced, and if we want to have trusting relationships, and I oftentimes explain, it requires some investment. We shouldn't blindly open up to somebody, but we should invest in cultivating a trusting relationship. And we'll find that if we invest properly and we know the criteria of what is trust, there's always somebody we can open our hearts to. And we have to have it. If we don't, it's very difficult. If we think that, oh, we can make it on our own, Maya is too strong. Prabhupada said, one piece of straw, easy to snap. You bundle it, it's very difficult to break. We have to find others. And if we're too proud, then So many verses which warn us about the dangers of pride.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Hare Krishna, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.